All right, we're rolling, Mike.
Hey, welcome to Road Testament. Today we're talking about the 10 collectible cars you need to buy today because they're going up in value. Ian Whalen's with us.
Hey, Mike.
Usually behind the camera. Today he's in front of it. That's today on Road Testament. Hey, welcome to Road Testament. Ian is controlling our screen from here. We are the only ones in the office at Drive on Twitter, facebook.com/DriveTV, and we're talking today about collectible cars, right? So what we did was I went through the sports car market, Keith Martin's sports car market pocket price guide, which came out recently, and they pick, usually it's big collectors looking through there, looking at cars that are going up tremendously in value, right? So your Ferraris, your what else? What else is there? Are there any cars that go up to the millions? Your Ferraris, your Cobras, your all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I went through and looked at lower price cars that have gone up in price and value in the last year.
Yeah, so they're a good start for collectors.
Yeah, so a good start for collectors. Cars that you may not think of when you think of collectible cars, but these are the ones that we think, based on their predictions, are going to do really well.
Yeah, and you could still enjoy these cars now. They're not so expensive that you're going to be afraid to put some miles on them and actually drive them around. And
yeah, and in some cases they're going to be cars that you're going to need to wrench on, and in some cases maybe they won't be.
Yeah.
So cars you can actually enjoy. BMW Bavaria. So the Europeans will be saying, what is a BMW Bavaria? Ian, you want to take that one?
Well, it was based on the BMW 2500 and 2800 that I guess we had in the United States and they had in Europe.
Yeah, one of the new sixes that became eventually the 5 Series.
Yeah, and our BMW importer extraordinaire, Max Hoffman, he ordered a special version which had, I guess it was based on the 2500 spec, but with the bigger engine from the 2800, so it's sort of a stripper model with a bigger engine, like a hot rod.
Yeah, kind of like an American muscle car, right? So he took the lower model, had the cloth seats, had the roll-up windows, and he put the bigger engine in it. Eventually had the 3-liter.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 71 to 74 being the most collectible. I think they've gone up 8% in value in the last year. Now, that's a car that has been traditionally not something that anybody wanted to collect. There were a lot of them around. You know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really stylish looking car. I mean, it's kind of ahead of its time in some ways, considering the age of it. Cars, the BMWs from the 80s still kind of looked like this. The E28 5 Series.
Well, it's true. And you know, the interesting thing about BMW is that as BMWs are becoming more complex and people are starting to look to the previous generations for a kind of a more stripped down experience, they're already doing with the E30, the E33 series, which are going up tremendously in value and hard to find if you can even find a good one, especially an M3. These are kind of getting the same effect that's going on with that. So, but 8% a year, not bad. We're looking down the road, maybe more than that.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's a fun car.
Yeah. So what's next? So 911 SC. So. What's the deal with the 911 SC, especially a Targa? Why the hell would you want that?
Well, I mean, I guess the Targa is probably the least desirable version, but I mean, it's still a great looking car. It's still 911 and you get wind in your hair and...
Well, the cool thing about the SC is, so what's happening basically is that now people are looking to the air-cooled 911s and they're all going up in value. Obviously, it's the 993 versions, the last air-cooled ones that are going up the most.
Yeah.
But the good thing about the SCs are, now that's, to clear it up, it's 78 to 83, I think, right?
Okay.
So right now, we're looking at the SC being a generation in which they corrected a lot of things.
It's kind of a sweet spot.
It is a sweet spot because it's still inexpensive enough that you might find one from 15 to 20 grand. I mean, you know, it's not like, you know, paperboy money. But 15 to 20 grand, you can get most of the things that had been wrong with the 911 before that. With the previous generation's 2.7 liter engine had problems. In 1975, they galvanized them, the bodies, so they stopped rusting as much. So the SC corrected a lot of problems, and yet they're not as sought after as the Carrera 3.2s that came later, or the 964s or the 993s. So you can get into a really good 911 for not that much money, and they've gone up about 6 to 7% in value. And now 911s have never really been appreciative, right? So they haven't been cars that you buy and get a lot of appreciation out of. They've been holding their value, but these are actually starting to go up in value.
I wonder if they're going up a little bit because people around my age might want to get into a 911, and maybe they're seeing that they're good values and putting a little bit of money into these now.
And that this generation was the first one that was kind of considered bulletproof.
And it's kind of still the traditional classic Porsche. It has a really simple interior.
Yeah.
So this is still kind of a basic sports car, which is nice.
Yeah, cool. What do we got next? Oh, this is your domain. So you're the Saab guy around here.
Yeah, I've had a few Saabs. I still do. And this is I never had 99, but I always liked the EMS, which was a great looking car.
Now this is 74 EMS, right? So the price guide, the sports car market price guide is looking at the EMS as one of the ones that are going up a little bit in value. What's the EMS about?
EMS stood for Electronic Manual Special. So it was kind of like the equivalent of the 2002 TII. It had fuel injection, but it had sports suspension and faster steering rack and a nicer interior. So it's kind of the sports version of the 99. Of course, this was a time when they were building rally cars. It was closely related to their actual rally car at the time.
Yeah, and this is just, I love this generation. I love the 99s. I think they look amazing, and they still look up to date. But even more so in going up in value is the turbo, right? Is the 99 turbo. Same, this is a little newer. That was a 74.
Yeah, this is the 3-door version. The other one was the 2-door with the notchback.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit newer of a car, and the styling's a little bit different on the front end, but not very much. But this was a pretty much a breakthrough car for the time. I mean, it was a mass-produced turbocharged car. I mean, there had been some other turbo cars on the market before, production cars, but they just weren't as well engineered as this and as well thought out.
Yeah, it kind of made the turbo, honestly, like as a real enthusiast choice.
Yeah.
Interestingly, maybe because of Saab's just going away right now, that interest in previous Saabs is really heightened at this point.
Yeah.
And this one's going up, 7 to 8% since last year. That's not too bad. If you can, and again, it's about finding one though. I mean, it's about looking around and finding.
You got to find a nice one. I wonder if the value went up a little bit since Top Gear did a feature on Saab's demise, which was, in my opinion, not a very good feature, but they did actually like this car and they featured it quite a bit. So
yeah, I mean, the Top Gear effect could definitely be in effect. Sunbeam Alpine, right? So the Alpine, there were like 3 series in the middle of the 60s, like between the 50s and 60s. All of them basically had like a 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 liter through the series 4. I just like I've always loved the design of the Alpine. Now, obviously, it's the Alpine's brother with the Ford V8. That's the one that gets all the
Tiger.
The Tiger gets all the respect because I mean, like the Cobra, this had the Tiger had a 289 V8 in it.
You're not going to be able to get one of those for less than 20 grand.
No, that's not something you're going to be able to get. But you could probably pick up an Alpine, and actually went up 14% in a year.
It's a really good-looking car, and I don't know, it seems like something different than all the MGs and Triumphs that you see as far as British sports cars go.
And you can get one for 10 grand?
Yeah.
Remember Dr. No, like that's the where Bond steps off the plane in the Bahamas and like rents one and immediately gets chased by
the good old days. I wish I could do that now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, what do you got next? Okay, so there's Britt Eklund on her way to Rod Stewart's house in the Triumph TR7. So this is actually an older model. So the TR7 is a car that gets absolutely no respect, I think, at least among people that I know. But it's actually, if you get a later model one, if you go when they moved production to Coventry in the later part of the 70s, the build quality actually was pretty decent.
It's not a bad-looking car. I mean, when I was a kid, somebody had one of these near where I lived, and I thought it was really cool, just that wedge shape thing. I mean, wedge-shaped cars were cool in the 70s and 80s.
Well, it's weird because it's a real divisive shape. I mean, because Triumphs were always much, the design was much more fluid and
Yeah.
not as much of an axe.
This was a departure
This
from
was
that.
kind of a departure for that. But, it's the later year TR7s, 79 to 81, have gone up a decent amount in the last couple of years.
All right.
So
This is a cool photo.
Volvo P1800, yeah. The one, though, that is going up in value is the 1800S. So I didn't know this, but the original P1800s were made by Jensen. So Volvo,
weird, right?
Yeah, Volvo contracted with Jensen Motors in the UK to build it. Now Jensen, is later having built the Jensen Interceptor, right? The British sports car with the giant Mopar
Yeah.
440, or they had the 383 at first and the 440.
Yeah, it's a cool car.
Yeah, that was a hell of a car, but they built this at first. That's not really the one you want. There were some issues, but so the one you want was, the reason why they call it the 1800S is because the S stands for Sweden, and they brought production to Sweden in 1963, and so you want the ones post-1963. I mean, 10% per year-over-year value increase.
It's a great looking car. I mean, it looks like a concept car or something
Yeah.
from the time. It's really cool.
I mean, the shape is really held up, and you can get them. I've seen them for $5,000 to $10,000 all day long.
They're not that fast or anything, but they're cool.
Well, that's kind of a reoccurring theme with all these cars. So, like, if you're looking for like the fastest cars you could collect, this is not going to be But it's like having a piece of art in your driveway.
I think the slow car fast thing applies.
Yeah, it applies on basically all these.
Yeah.
So Karmann Ghia, and okay, it applies nowhere near as much as it does here.
This is slow car slow.
Yeah, this could be. I mean, the Karmann Ghia is another one of those timeless shapes that you have to really love it, because you're going to be in it a while, because it's going to take you a while to get places.
Right, and it'll still turn heads.
Yeah, it'll just turn them very slowly as you pass.
I actually have an old brochure of this car, and it was a VW brochure, and they were comparing it to, I think, the 356 at the time.
Yeah.
It may have been an early 911, and they were sort of touting it as the poor man's Porsche.
The poor man's 356.
I mean, it has the styling, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked them. It'd be something you put in your garage and drive once in a while.
Yeah, take your girlfriend out.
Take your girlfriend out.
You don't want to scare her too much.
No, but but as a collectible, obviously you want to get the best one as you can. Same rules apply in all collecting, but this one is a really super old one. I think this is like a 57. So if you could go to the 50s and get a decent one, you're into big money. But it's the later ones in the 60s, the later part of the 60s, that there were so many around that you can go to California and probably buy 3 of them for whatever's in your pocket. But then, all right. So why, do you ask? Is there a 1978 Corvette up here? Well, this is the silver anniversary Corvette. Now, I know what you think of Corvettes.
Well, I like Corvettes. C3 is just not my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, so the C3, having grown up with the C3, I'm sort of partial to them, even though they're probably not the ones you want to get. I mean, at the trough of Corvettedom, 1975, I think they had 140 horsepower. This one, okay, so if you get the L48, it's 185 horsepower. If you get the optional L82, you're into almost 200 horsepower.
It really needs those wide tires to keep all that power on the ground.
Yeah. However, the anniversary model has actually appreciated, like a decent amount in the last year, and you can get like an amazing mint condition one for like $12,000. So,
well, that's something. I mean, if you want to get a classic Corvette, that's pretty cool that you could spend that kind of money and get something that looks like this. I mean, it's a cool shape. Even though it's not my favorite Corvette, I acknowledge it's a cool looking shape.
Yeah.
And you certainly aren't going to get a C2 for that kind of money.
No.
And you probably don't want an early C4.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the thing, is that with Corvettes are going up. Corvettes outside of this sphere, like the 60s, and I mean, they're all going up in ridiculous jumps. So here's one that you can kind of get in on the ground floor with. I mean, I remember when you could get a 454, a 72 454 C3 for like $5,000 or $6,000.
Yeah.
And now you're looking at 30 or 40, you know. So this is, obviously, if you have a Burt Reynolds fetish of some kind, and not that he drove one, but this kind of reminds me of that era, the whole Hooper,
Yeah.
like
I'm
Gator
guessing
Hooper era.
I'm guessing by now, if you wanted to get some more power out of that engine, there's ways to do it.
There's ways to do it, but then you really kind of almost want it to stay as showroom stock as possible.
If you're
as
collecting.
slow, and that's the thing. Like if you're collecting it, you kind of want it to be as slow as possible because that just proves that it's original.
It's totally legit that way.
Exactly. All right.
All right.
So what's next? Oh, look at this, an actual
This
car.
is a fast car you can drive fast.
Fast car you can drive fast. So the Mark IV Toyota Supra with the 2JZ.
It's a cool car. I think that car still looks kind of modern now.
Yeah, now honestly, I didn't realize that these things were appreciating. 8% year over year. It makes sense to me because it's getting harder to find a good, clean, original turbo because of, we'll call it the Fast and Furious effect.
As explored by our friend Matt Farah.
The internet says that all Supras have to have 1,000 horsepower. But I've driven a 1,000 horsepower Supra, and let me tell you what most people won't tell you about a 1,000 horsepower Supra. It sucks as a street car.
Yes, Matt Farah so eloquently put it. If you can find one, it's a very good, I would say it's a very good investment, and actually the prices are bearing that out. So.
Yeah, and I think the people. When I was in high school, this was the most amazing car.
Yeah, 320 horsepower. I mean, that was when 300 horsepower was like, oh my God, like 320 horsepower.
Yeah.
That's significant. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was high tech,
Right.
twin turbo, had what I thought at the time was a cool big wing on the back, and
it's
part of the charm, I guess.
Yeah.
Now.
So, interestingly enough, this is the one that's going up in value because this is obviously the most sought after, the hardest to find. But if you do find one, I think this one actually has a lot of really serious upside potential. Like if you can get a really good one, I think you'll double your money in 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if you. It's in car collecting years. Actually, it's like two.
All these cars have a lot of potential to do really well and double money because they're not worth that much yet. But
right. I mean,
once you get higher end cars, it's harder to do that.
Yeah. Again, the problem with this is sort of the opposite problem of buying a British car, where the engine is just so complex that eventually, probably it's not too hard to find parts, and you can find manuals and stuff online, and there are plenty of super enthusiast forums and stuff you could find out how to work on that motor. But it's a complex motor, and engine. Obviously people hate when we say motor. Anyway, so what do we got next? Okay, so this one, a Triumph Spitfire, right? I had no idea. The Triumph Spitfire from, I think it's like 62 to 70. This is a 68. Went up 28%. 38%. I misspoke. 38%.
That's pretty amazing.
That is pretty amazing.
Get one of these while you can.
So it probably went up from what, like $3,000 to 4,500 or something.
Yeah, that's still pretty good.
That's not bad. So somehow there is a run on 60s era Triumph Spitfires. So you should probably get in on one. I mean, I just think, honestly, the Spitfire is it's my second favorite Triumph, but I love this design. I think just this kink and the way that the fenders and the quarter panels,
a long hood,
come together. The long hood. Again, I think this all comes down to how many are left.
All right. Well,
So
I think that's it.
That's it for Road Testament today. We want to know what you think are the best collectible cars. What car would you buy right now if you could, and you were looking down the road to collect it? Ian Whalen. I'm not asking you. I'm asking them.
All right.
All right. @Drive on Twitter, Facebook.com/DriveTV, and we'll see you next week. Later. All right, now you got to get up and turn the camera off. You want me to do it?
No, I got it.
Oh.